I'm talking today to Erik Hersman, who is the founder of iHub in Nairobi, which is an incubator space for young startups and a sort of community space for developers. Tell me more about the iHub and how it came about and what it's there to do.
Yeah, so the iHub stands for the Innovation Hub, and really it's less about incubation than it is about pre-incubation, ideas, community coming together, and interesting things happening. We're trying to form the nexus point for the technology community in Nairobi to come together, and we're say 8 to 9 months into this experiment, and we see that we have about 2,400, just over 2,400 members from the Nairobi tech community who are members there, and the place is getting a lot of use. A lot of really good tech events are happening there. The community's coming together. We see new startups coming up out of it. We see investors finding investees there. It's really been interesting to be a part of it.
Since we're not in the iHub, can you describe physically what it is? Because actually unless you're there, it's quite hard to imagine what it might be.
Yeah, sure. The iHub is an open space. We dedicate about 1/3 of it to a co-working environment where certain people have a desk and a locker and they work from there every day. And then the other 2/3 is open space. It's got a coffee house in it. It's got a server room in it, and anybody who's a green member for the iHub can come in and use the space for free. They can sit down in a beanbag chair. There's a little library there with all the tech books that you would like to read on, the best programming for mobile phones or how to build a better business. And then there's other areas for you to have a meeting, so we can clear all the tables and chairs out of an area, and you can fit up to 150 people.
And you've had a very interesting talk program, haven't you?
I mean, we've had everybody from, we have fireside chats with CEOs, everybody from, Michael Joseph to Nick Nesbitt, and we're having the head of the head of Nokia East and Southern Africa come in soon for his fireside chat, and we've also had, I guess, more ordinary people give talks too. We have this event called Mobile Monday that happens once a month, which is now bringing in between 150 and 200 people every time. We just had 2 days ago the African Digital Art meetup, which ended up being 150 of the who's who of design in Nairobi, for everything from digital art to websites to logo design. It was phenomenal. Videography. So yeah, it's this eclectic group, but they all have one thing in common. That is that they are fused together by technology, and it's whether you're a web designer, you're a researcher, you're a blogger, you're a programmer, that's your home.
It's a bit like a sea. Describe the interesting fish that swim in this particular sea.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. And what we set out to do, we didn't define too much on purpose, because we didn't know what to expect either. So we said, let's create a space that brings people together, from the tech community, and let's make it neutral so that anybody, whether they're corporate, government, academic, startup, programmer, freelancer, can feel at home there. So that's about it. And so I like to tell the story about when we went in to get one of our first corporate partners, which was Google. The corporate partners, by the way, are Google, Microsoft, Nokia, and Wananchi. And we said, we sat down with Joe and his team, and Joe said, so, how are you going to measure success here? And we said, well, I think if you put enough smart people in a room, good things will happen. And the room kind of went silent for a minute as Google, who measures everything, thought about it and said, okay, what do you mean by that? And so we started having this discussion saying, we actually don't know how to measure it yet, but give us a year, we'll figure that out. And then in year 2, we'll talk about what we measure for success. Yeah. Now we have a much better idea. We're measuring things like how many investors come in and meet with investees, how many people get invested in. How many guys learn how to better pitch their product and learn about real business side things? How do we run programs and projects to make a better developer, right? So they become better at coding. Those kind of things. And I think that's, we're getting a better idea of what this place's space is in the community. What
sort of business ideas, though, have come up, and things that you think are interesting? Just your take on what's out there.
I think there's some really interesting things that are, of course, Kenya specific. One of them is the whole idea of mobile payment and aggregation around that, because there's 4 different mobile operators and 4 different payment systems. and there's a lot of money to be made in it. Yeah, they're not playing together. So why is there not more aggregation? So we have bottom-up potential on that. The guys at Symbiotic and the guys at Pesapal and a couple others of them are coming together. Zegatech is another one. We're doing mobile aggregation services for payments. We'll see which one wins.
Yeah.
And then there's some other things around. I think there's really a lot of room to run in the e-commerce side. Because we are one of the few countries that has, guess what, a digital payment system. There's no excuse now not to have a commerce side to what you do, and that really works. And so I think that's an industry that is bound to grow. And there's a couple of other ones that I'm not enough of an expert in to say if they're going to be successful, but I think there's some interesting things, tools that have been built around agriculture, mobile-based tools for farmers and insurance providers around agriculture that might make it.
Interesting. And in terms of the iHub itself, it's become a concept that seems to be sort of spreading like a virus across the continent.
Yeah, we've seen a couple others who say, okay, we'd like to take this model and do this in Ghana, or do this in Ivory Coast, or do this in Tanzania. And while we're all for it, in fact, anybody who calls up and says we want to do this, we will tell them everything we know. We just say, here's what we know. The problem is, here's what we know is really still in its experimental and early stages.
How many months old are you now?
Really, since we opened the doors, which was about July. So we're about 7 months in to the doors open.
So in a way, you're still exploring.
Yeah, we don't know all that we don't know yet, right?
Yeah.
And so it's easy for us to say what we think we know.
Yeah.
But there's so many things that we're still discovering. Like, we are still trying to build up, a better design community interaction, and we're still trying to understand how do we build a space that attracts young entrepreneurs who are technologists, but trains them on the business side. That's quite clearly what we've learned is a very big gap.
Yeah.
How do we pair people up with mentors, or pair people up with business side co-executives? Those are the type of things that we're still exploring. We don't have an answer for yet.
Okay. And where else on the continent do you think has the kind of culture that might lend itself to the kinds of activities you're talking about?
I think you have to go to a place that has a decent size technology hub. Usually this is an urban center that has enough programmers and designers and businesses in tech. So that ends up being the Lagos, Accra, Nairobi, Cairo, Johannesburg, Cape Town, those types of places. So what doesn't have anything yet?
Sort of creative cities in some strange way.
So you have to have that, but then you also have to have the desire by the community to work together in some form. Maybe not each and everybody with everybody, but individually, right? Yeah. And I think that the personality types that would best fit that are going to be found in Accra. I think Accra probably has the best chance of doing what we've done. But one of the secrets, I think, if not even a secret, you just need somebody to really own it and drive it.
Yes.
Have a vision for what this is and drive it, and they have to tweak it for their city. You can't take what worked in Nairobi and expect it to work in another city. In Africa, I couldn't take this to Tanzania and Dar es Salaam and say I can do this there. I don't even know if I could.
Yeah.
It has to be somebody from Dar es Salaam, who understands the kind of the personality of the tech space there and that community and puts that together.
Thank you very much, Erik, for talking to me.